I'll be speaking on misrepresentation of identities. My name is Sada Malumfashi. I'm a writer, filmmaker, and curator. I've been curating the Hausa International Book and Arts Festival, and my work is dedicated to documenting who we are, where we come from, and what we're going to be as a people. I would like to engage with the audience a little bit, so indulge me. Please show of hands if you are able to speak Hausa in this space. Okay, good. So listen to this. Ko da mun ka isko shi zamne bisa dakkali ta bakin garka, sai ya shido ya jiyo mu, ya ce ku taho domin ga muhimmanci a garai. Ku taho gaba ɗayanku har na bakin garka. How many of us understand this dialect? A quarter of the number, but this is Hausa too. Maybe a different dialect, but Hausa notwithstanding. So let me start with my first point. We've been taught a very simple story. Hausa is Hausa, one people, one language, one identity. Clean, stable, finished. But our lives and our history keep interrupting this story. I grew up inside Hausa literary culture. My father is a professor of Hausa literary history. I grew up with Hausa in my mouth before English. I grew up reading books, pamphlets, journals published in the 1930s and 1940s in Hausa. Today, my professional life as a writer, filmmaker, and curator revolves around Hausa and its cultural world. So I do not arrive at this question from the margins. In 2003, my family moved from Kaduna to Sokoto. As I mentioned, I grew up speaking Hausa, my mother tongue. Sokoto, Hausa was a very common language. So I felt at home, I was going to be fine. Except I wasn't. I could not understand what my new friends in Sokoto were saying, and they could not understand what I was speaking. They said I wasn't speaking Hausa, but Kananchi. As at that time, I had never been to Kano in my life. That was my first lesson in the imagined identities. This next part is about language and power. So in Sokoto, what I thought Hausa was a shared language. Instead, what I learned was that it's a collection of dialects, territories, histories, and power relations layered together to give one language called Hausa. But it all started when early European explorers collapsed the then Sokoto Caliphate into what they called the Hausa territory. People living there did not necessarily identify themselves or the location as a Hausa territory. As such, an administrative shortcut hardened. It became repeated over and over. A filing cabinet was created, and millions of people were placed inside it. Now let's widen the lens a little. We often speak about Northern Nigeria or Arewa as if it is one entity that has always existed, fully formed, waiting to be discovered. But the name Northern Nigeria is very recent. In 1900, the British proclaimed a protectorate called Northern Nigeria. Before that, there was no such entity. British military expeditions continued well into the 1910s to make this knot a real knot. What existed before that were many polities: the Sokoto Caliphate, the Sheikhdom of Borno, Nupe kingdoms, Igala, and Jukun kingdoms, and hundreds of independent other territories, or called Kasashi, each with its own idea of logic and belonging. So before we were Nigerians, people did not introduce themselves by ethnicity or tribe. They introduced themselves by the places they belong to: Katsinawa, Zagi, Kanawa, Gobirawa. Belonging was territorial. So you could be a Bayereban Zaria, a Yoruba man from Zaria, or a Banupen Kanu, a Nupe man from Kanu. Plural identities were ordinary. There has never been a single story of a single Hausa ancestor or a moment where all the Hausa people agreed and came together to declare one land, one people. What existed were always city-states, countries in their own right, even before the jihad of Usman ibn Fodio. Now, I want to talk about hyphenated identities, and I'll come back to the audience with some questions. How many of us identify as Nigerians? Ghanaians, you can raise your hand also. Okay? Keep your hands up, please, if you identify as a Nigerian. How many identify as Hausa? Okay? How many identify as Hausa Fulani? 1, 2. Interesting. Keep your hands down. Another question. How many of you can speak Nupe? Of course. Keep your hands up if you can speak Nupe and Hausa. Not bad. How many want to be identified as Hausa Nupe? 1, 2, 3. Very interesting crowd. So this is where imagined identities come true. They do not appear out of nowhere. They are built by institutions, by newspapers, by schools, even by power. Which brings me back to the most popular misunderstanding of all, Hausa-Fulani. Hausa Fulani, an imagined identity. What is it? Is it a new ethnic group or a political convenience? Historically, in the 1960s, Lagos-based newspapers needed a name for the northern political establishment. Hausa Fulani fits the headline. It became popular in newspapers, it was repeated, and the more it was repeated, the more real it felt. Repetition created belief, and belief created a forced identity. This imagined block then found its place within a political consciousness of the Northern People's Congress, the NPC. They took it, and these were former sons of emirs, former sons of former colonial administrators, or graduates of elite political institutions like Bariwa College. But today, the thought process is the Hausa-speaking farmer in Wushishi and the Fulani-speaking cattle rearer in Eruga in Suleja one and the same identity? I don't think they will want to be bundled together as one. So the hyphen is not necessarily about culture, but maybe about the ballot box. So when we hear Hausa Fulani, especially in moments of political tension, in moments of violence, let's think about who benefits from this simplification, who gains power when millions of people are bundled together as one, and what other stories are erased in the process. Once an imagined identity becomes real, it's very difficult to dismantle. But history remembers, language remembers. I will want us all to remember, because sometimes a 10-year-old child moving from Kaduna to Sokoto remembers too. Thank you very much.